Welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Joris. I used to run HR myself at companies like Atlassian and Squarespace, and I'm the co-founder of Pin. And in the past half a year, we've kind of gone down this AI route. So I'm excited to show you what kind of tricks I've learned along the way. And my co-host is Stacy, who I'll introduce. Stacy is doing everything AI within the business at Pin, anything from GTM to building tools and bots and etc. Prior to joining Pin, she ran HR at the US offices of Culture Amp. So that's our background. Let's dive in and get this webinar kicked off. Stacey, do you want to do some housekeeping?
Yes. So we already managed our first admin thing. We figured out that the chat is now set so that everyone can chat. I see that people are in there. That is fabulous. That's exactly what we want because we're here to learn from yours, but we also are here to learn from each other and share resources. So please get in the chat and do that. Also, chat in the chat, but ask your questions in the Q&A if you can. That helps me better sort out what's happening, and that allows other folks to upvote questions. It also allows us to keep those questions if we don't get to them, and then we can answer them in the follow-up. And if you want to enable captions, look for those three-dot menu, click more and enable live transcript. If there's anything that I just mentioned that you don't see, check in the three-dot more menu, because that's usually where things are hiding. And I will fade into the background, but I will remain in the chat.
Great. Thanks, everyone. This is going to be a very interesting session because I'm going to do stuff live today, which can of course go horribly wrong. So bear with me as I'm going to press and click buttons and see if I can set up real workflows live on stage, on the webinar stage. Now, what the goal is of today is to give you information, resources, everything that you need to feel more confident in creating your own AI-powered workflows for your company. And we're going to do that by watching me build them live. Now, there's a bunch of workflows that I'm going to be trying to build. One is a simpler new manager flow that I'll build in Zapier, which provides new managers with information automatically upon promotion. Then I'm going to build a flow in Claude, an AI-only flow, which is going to be an offboarding flow. So if someone is offboarding a few days from now, the manager gets information, instructions on what they need to do. Then I'll build a more complicated onboarding flow in a tool called N8N, which basically collects information from new hires before their first day and adds them to relevant Slack groups based on form selections. I will not be building them all live, all of these steps, because that would take way too long. But I will definitely click on a lot of these nodes that I'm building along the way, and I'll explain all of that to you. And then lastly, I'll show you how to scale all of these automations, because if you're setting up 10 automations, it's manageable. But if you set up 50 or 100 automations and flows, it becomes very unmanageable very quickly. So I'll show you how that works in a tool like Pin. Now, I'm just going to give you some quick visuals of what we'll be building. So this is kind of the end state of the Zapier flow. You can see it's a relatively straightforward flow of steps along the way. Then I'm building an offboarding flow in Claude, and that's more done through prompts. I'll show how that works. Then this more complicated flow in N8N that I mentioned before. Again, I'm not going to build all of this out because we just simply would run out of time, but I'll show you and give you enough information to show you how to build this. And then we'll look at Pin, on how Pin provides visibility across lots of moments that matter and the automations that run across your business. Cool. So let's dive in. Firstly, before I start building, there's just some general tips that I learned along the way that I'd love to share. Firstly, when building flows for the first time, AI can be your best coach. So if you're building in Claude, ask Claude how to build what you're building in Claude. It's so much easier. So don't feel that is a weaker kind of path. It's actually a very strong path. They can check for you, AI can check for you, and they know those tools inside out, obviously. Second thing that I want to point out is there's a lot of chatter around AI, and AI is incredibly powerful, but certain things are done better just for simple automations. If this, then that rules. Now, you can sometimes incorporate some AI elements within those simple automated workflows. But AI can cost money. Can be expensive. And if there's consistency required and just a person should receive a certain message at a certain time, an automation is actually better used. Thirdly, don't obsess too much over the AI models that you're using, whether you're using Anthropic, Gemini, unless you're doing incredibly in-depth research or coding tasks within HR, any model probably suffices. So don't stress too much on picking the right model. You probably want to pick, though, the model that is being used by your organization already. If you have an enterprise license of Claude, for example, use Claude, right? And then fourthly, privacy matters. If you're dumping employee personal data into random AI tools, I would advise you against that. That's not how we treat personal information security. I won't go into too much depth during this session, but definitely ask your AI tools again for advice here. How can I make sure that my data is kept private? Am I at risk here? Should I be sharing this in a tool like that? That will give you good answers there as well. So let's start with something simpler. We're going to be building something on a tool called Zapier. Zapier is probably one of the more well-known tools out there. We want to track when someone becomes a manager. And once someone becomes a manager, we want to summarize some instructions that are kept on a Notion page, which varies for every department. And then we want to select that newly promoted manager a summary, including a relevant link. Now, we have connected to automate this workflow. We've connected a few tools. We're using Zapier, obviously, to build a workflow. We're using OpenAI, which is integrated within Zapier to create the right instructions for those managers. We're using Notion to fetch instructions that are kept on there. We're using Slack to send the instructions. And then we're using Bamboo HR to sync data. Now, for this demo, though, I did not connect Bamboo HR data with real data, firstly, because of privacy reasons. And secondly, for the purpose of this demo, that's not really necessary. Now, I'll also say that prior to this demo, I already connected Zapier to Notion and Slack. And I added some sample data from Bamboo HR as synthetic data just to make sure that the demo can run, even though we're not literally connected to Bamboo HR at this point. So let's dive in. Okay. So welcome to Zapier for those who haven't seen this yet. Now, the first step, as I mentioned, is fetching this Bamboo HR data, which I will do with made-up data for now. But this normally tracks through Bamboo's API. You can track all the information. Now, the first thing that we want to do is to see if anything is changing in the data. And we can do that through a simple if this, then that rule that I think Zapier is quite well known for. So we're going to create in here, we're going to set a filter and we're going to apply a rule. And we're going to set this condition for if this, then that. If the employee's new direct reports is greater than, number is greater than 0, and if the previous direct reports matches 0, so in other words, if a person has moved from having 0 to having 1 or more direct reports, we want Zapier to identify that. So we're going to go into that. And we're going to continue with the next step of our process. So the system has now identified folks who have moved from having 0 to having 1 or more direct reports. And we want to ask Zapier to fetch data. For those folks, we want to fetch data from Notion. So we're going to set up a new action step, and we're going to go into Notion. We're going to connect to Notion. And again, I've selected this before. And let's see, I'm going to retrieve one of the pages in within Notion. Now, again, this is where I use, I would have used AI to kind of figure out, like, do I just pick a page or do I pick a Notion page, including the block children? Block children basically says like, hey, give me not just the high-level page information, but actually all the content that is displaying in there. So I'm going to do that. So and I need to actually give the block ID of the actual page that I want to retrieve. So I'm going to take my block ID for the page that I'm trying to receive, and I continue. I can test this as well. And here you can see all the page information comes in. I'm going to go to the next step here. I'm going to do some snazzy stuff now because I'm going to actually use AI to grab information from that page. So here you can see an AI prompt that I can add in. Bear with me as I'm going to my next section here. I'm going to configure a prompt, and the system already kind of gives you information on what kind of system you can use. And here's like where I'm saying, like, don't stress the model too much. You can use different models. Some of them are very powerful. You can go to, all the way to Anthropic's like highest level models. But for a very simple prompt like this, we can, a ChatGPT like simple model is sufficient. Why do I select a lesser model? Because it costs less, right? For every single AI run that you do, you're paying. And if you're running very simple AI tasks through high-level models, you're paying more tokens. So you don't want to do that. You want to create, want to keep it simple, if at all possible. Bear with me. I just need to copy paste a prompt. So I'm going to give the system a prompt saying something as follows, like, hey, you're an HR assistant writing a Slack message to a newly promoted manager. Now we have their name, so I'm going to be giving that because that's nice if they're writing the message and they're actually mentioning the name. We're mentioning their department as well, and I'll show you in a moment why that is important. And I'm fetching the Notion content, and then I'm asking AI to write a Slack message using a certain structure. So I'm giving some instructions on how to do that. And I'm also saying, I want you to only include information that is relevant to them, and if they're in a certain department, I only want you to fetch the information related to that department. The reason why I set that up like that is because we have a Notion page created for newly promoted managers. So this is the page that was just fetched. And we have a playbook in Notion with a lot of information on what a new manager should be doing. And departments, the heads of departments, just dropped in sections that are relevant to them only, to their department specifically. So in this case, for support managers, they need to do this. Engineering managers need to do that. So it's different for every department, but we manage it onto one Notion page. Now, obviously, if they're a manager in engineering, only things related to engineering should be grabbed from this page. So I've asked AI to grab only relevant sections of the page. So I've completed this AI step, and now as a last step, I want to send a Slack message. So I'm going to find my Slack message, and I want to send a direct message.
Joris, are you able to make this side screen a little bit bigger? I think we got a question asking for a zoom on it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, perfect. No worries. So you can see I'm sending a message here as a direct message. I'm using my own account. And if I configure this, I'm going to choose my own username for now, just because I want to run a test that everyone can see here. And I want to, as the message in the test, I want to simply use the output that was generated before. So I'm going to, that was the analyzing, that was a step 4, analyze and return data with AI. Here you can see the step output of this message. That looks okay now. So I'm going to get this message output to be generated based on the previous step. I'm going to continue this, and I can run a sample test of this. Now let's see if this all worked. Yep. So just now a message has appeared. So this runs automatically every time a person moves from having 0 to having 1 or more direct reports. At the moment, I'm triggering that myself, but in the future, if you're connected to the Bamboo HR API, this will connect automatically. It searches this page and only will display relevant information related to this person's responsibilities. So this person has information about sprint planning because they were a manager in engineering. Managing customer support has something differently written. And this is the message that people will receive automatically. So there you go. We have created a full workflow in Zapier from start to finish, using a little bit of AI, but predominantly using a workflow method. So let's go to the next stage, to Claude. So this is an AI workflow, an AI-only workflow that we'll be creating. I'm using a tool called Claude for this. What I've done earlier, I already connected Claude to Notion and to Slack. I won't be adding the Bamboo HR API details of our company and displaying them for the world to see. So instead, I've disabled that temporarily and using some sample data again instead, just like last time. Now, the goal here is for us to check who will be offboarding soon. So you can set Claude to say, hey, check everyone who will be who has an exit date or the last date in Bamboo HR in a number of days' time. So we'll be checking that. It finds the relevant manager of that person. Then it sends a Slack with instructions to that manager, and we'll find relevant onboarding instructions. Again, I use Notion because we use Notion a lot here, with a checklist to include as a link. So the connected apps here, I'm using a tool called Claude Routines that came out, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. They're moving so fast. Claude Routines allows you to schedule the same task over and over again for certain agentic actions to run. Of course, I mentioned the page in Notion to link to. I'm connecting GitHub. If you're using Claude, you'll always be creating a repository in GitHub. And then I'm using the Bamboo HR API to find future exits. But again, I have not enabled that this time. So let's go to Claude Routines. So if you're using Claude, you can go to Claude AI -code-routines, or just look it up online. And you can set up those recurring events to take place. And you can create a new routine within Claude. Now you can see here, there's one already created. You can see a calendar of every time we're running a certain automation. Now I haven't enabled this yet, but you can see them scheduled, and you can see how many runs are being used, which is good because you can track your own usage within Claude. If it gets too much, then you know that you're spending too much money, unless you have an enterprise license and you don't necessarily care about that, but as a good enterprise, you should be caring about that to some extent. So what we'll do is we're going to be creating a new routine here for those offboarding instructions. So we click on New Routine. I'm going to call it Offboarding Instructions. And what Claude does, it basically operates, instead of having steps of a workflow like you have with Zapier or N8N, Claude just works through prompts, just like you're prompting ChatGPT with a question that you have, and it kind of comes back with a result. In a way, it works in the same way, but you need to be pretty detailed about your prompts because you're basically describing the workflow steps that you want to see in this prompt. So I'm going to add a prompt that I pre-prepared beforehand, and I'm just going to describe a little bit of what I wrote in that prompt. But folks, we can send the recording afterwards, or we can send the prompts afterwards as well if you're interested to see how I write those. But here you can see the instructions are something like, hey, you're scheduled offboarding assistance. Each round you identify employees whose last workday is exactly 3 business days from today. Going to zoom in a little bit. And I want to write those folks a warm and professional message with some information on when the termination date is, how I format it, the link to the Notion checklist, obviously. And then I actively describe the steps involved in this process. Step 1, calculate the target date. Step 2, fetch the exits. Now, in this demo mode, I use synthetic data, as I mentioned, because I'm not showing you our real API information from Bamboo HR, but you would be connected to Bamboo HR, the API. And then we want to filter folks, because we only want to fetch people who actually have an exit date coming up. And then we find the matching employees. And then we compose the message. And then the message, again, we have a warm professional message, and I'm basically describing how I want to write this message. Now you can see here, there's a certain format that I'm using. If you're doing it for the first time, just ask Claude how to write this message. Right? You don't have to try this through trial and error. Claude can perfectly explain to you how to actually write this message very easily. So going back here, I'm going to have to select a repository. If you're using Claude, you have to be linked to a repository on a system like GitHub, which sounds a little bit more technical. It's not super hard. It's easy to do. But having said all that, you may sometimes be better off just using a tool like Zapier or N8N for something really simple. Because this, what I'm describing here, is really just a workflow step. It doesn't necessarily need to be run fully through AI. But I'm going to select my repository that I'm using for this, and I'm going to connect it to Bamboo HR for access. If you set this up and you're connecting it to your Bamboo HR instance, obviously I'm not providing the actual API key that we have as a business, but you will be pasting your API key in here. And I want to run this on a schedule every day at 9 a.m. And I want to be connected to the tools, Notion, and Slack. So I've got these instructions created now. I can run a test, and it starts to run. This is a test. Again, I'm using synthetic data, so it's not real data. And if I click on here, it will start running the session as if it's 9 a.m. the next day and finds all the data. Now, while this runs, I just want to say this is fully based on AI. So in order to run something like this, you use tokens, and those tokens cost money, as I mentioned before. Now, this is a relatively simple automation. You may not actually want to run that through a tool like Claude, because automations, in a way, you can run time and time and time again, and it's free other than the software subscription that you need for a system like a Zapier. Now you can see here that the steps have run. It found a person, Sam Carter in this case, who matches the criteria. They need to be sent a message. Now, let me check my Slack. There you go. It just should have come through. Yeah, it just came through just now. So I ran this, and Claude has identified, hey, this person, Sam, is exiting. For this demo environment, you can see here, demo, this message would normally go to Alex Morgan. In this case, it goes to myself because I want you to see how this would run and what it would look like. So you can see here, a message would have gone to Alex Morgan saying something like, hey, heads up, Sam Carter's last day is on this date. And it would link to the offboarding checklist on Notion that we have created. So this manager is completely prepared now. They know what to do. They have all the information, and you don't have to follow up with people manually, which is kind of the bane of our existence in HR, right? There's so many things that we want to keep track of. Cool. Let's keep going. Let's touch on a more complicated workflow. So this workflow I built in N8N, and it's used during pre-onboarding to let a new hire select an employee resource group. Now, what we want to do is we want to capture from a person, a new hire, before they start, hey, which ERGs would you like to join after day one? We would like to add that person to that Slack group. Then we would like to send a little welcome message saying, hey, Joris, this new hire, Joris, has joined the parents at PIN Slack group. And then we also want to send me, that new hire who's like that ERG, to receive an email with any upcoming events. So you can see it's a little bit more complicated here. We're fetching different data at different times, and it's a longer automated flow. So what we did is what I done earlier. Again, I connected Notion and Slack connectors. And again, same thing with Bamboo HR. I did not actually for this demo connect the Bamboo API data because it's a little bit too revealing. I disabled that, but use sample data instead. So I'm using N8N. I'm using Anthropic for some AI summarization of content from Notion pages. I'm connected to email or Gmail. I'm adding a form in here, Notion, Slack, and of course Bamboo HR. So let's go into a N8N workflow. Now you can see this workflow is a bit longer, and that means I don't have time during this demo to go through everything and build this out. So I'm going to be clicking in to what we call these nodes, these steps along the way. Now I'm going to zoom in on this. So there's a few stages to this workflow. The first stage is that I'm going to be enrolling a new hire into this workflow. Now, normally for this, you're connected to a system like Bamboo HR Workday or Bob or whatever kind of HRIS you have. But we're doing that we're doing that manually in this case, and then we're putting that data into a table, or I should say only the relevant data for this particular workflow we're going to be putting into a table. Then I'm going to be sending a pre-onboarding email that includes a form. So I can see the data is fetched. I can see, hey, new hires coming up. I'm going to be sending this new hire an email. So I'm connected to Gmail here. I'm going to send them an ERG invite email asking them, hey, what ERG do you want to join? And attached to that, there's a form. Then I'd like to wait until this person has actually started and then invite that user to a channel, and the relevant Slack channel for that ERG that the person has selected. So you can see here, there's normally a wait on that because we're waiting until day 2 of the person starting. So this person is added to that Slack group on day 2 of them starting. I have deactivated that node in this sample because I want this automation to run automatically from end to end. I'm going to be inviting the user to the channel, and I'm going to post an ERG welcome message into that channel. And then lastly, I want N8N to go and fetch the Notion page related to the ERG that person has selected. So if I select parents at PIN group, I want them to go find that page on Notion, fetch the content, and I want AI to create a summary of that Notion page, because that Notion page can be very long. I want a summary of that. I want AI to kind of do some interpretation of that data, and I want to send that summary via email. So let's click into some of these elements. I'm going to power through this. So this is the fetching of the data. Then you can create a table. You can kind of set the fields that you want to create. So here you can say first name, last name, and I put in some test data in as well. Now, what should come out of this is this long table. And that's what you want. You want the data to be organized. Clicking out of this, that table actually comes back as well later in the process when I want to summarize and fetch the right data. So I'm going to ask for another table to be created there. I won't do that at the time being. I'm just going to show you something else first. So we've got the table, and we can now we can ask the system to send let me execute this workflow. I'm going to execute this workflow. Instead of sending the actual email, I'm going to select a group just as test data. I'm going to submit this, and that should run some of this data. You can see here, it's running all these click messages. It's at the generate ERG summary page now, and it's going to be sending me an email. Now, what the output of all of this is that I should, in Slack, let's see. Yeah, there you go. In the parents at Slack channel, you can see a message has appeared because I didn't put that wait node in, so it appeared immediately saying, hey, please welcome yours to the parents at PIN Slack channel. They're joining PIN as a new team member, and they're part of this community now. So this is automated through N8N, which basically flows all the way through here. The other thing that I should have now received as well is an email that celebrates the fact that I've joined the ERG parents at PIN, and it provides me a summary through AI with anything that was written on the ERG page Notion. So we have on Notion, we have an ERG page. There's a lot of information on here with the meeting structure, communications, upcoming events, etc., etc. And Traffic has created a summary of that, formatted it in a nice way, and sends this as an email. And the way to set that up, let's see. I'm adding in an additional prompt here saying, hey, you're a friendly HR assistant at PIN. A new hire has just joined, and I want you to write a warm, concise welcome message. Now, folks, I wish I had the time to go through all of these steps individually. I don't. So I'm going to power through to show you the last step. I can, however, after this, send you all of this information. I can send you all the prompts that I've used to kind of put this together. But there's a lot of detail in here on how to call folks, what prompts to use. It gets a little bit technical sometimes. First time you do it, it's probably a bit technical. But again, you can use Claude, you can use ChatGPT to help you write all of these steps. The last thing I wanted to show you is related to a question earlier, like what happens if we're running a lot of automations at the same time across a multitude of different stages of the employee journey, like onboarding, manager promotions, offboarding, anniversaries, etc., etc. So for that, you can use a tool like Pin. Basically, what Pin does is it organizes, like out of the box, you'll be provided with an employee journey with all moments that matter in the journey that you can possibly consider. You can remove moments or you can add moments to that journey. And because we're connected to different systems, Pin is connected to different systems, like Bamboo HR or other enterprise systems that you're using, you can see how many people find themselves in each of these moments. So you can see how many people are about to celebrate an anniversary, how many people have recently become a manager, how many people are about to have their 90-day check-in. And then for all of these moments, you can decide what must happen. So you can turn on these flows, these automated flows. So for example, if someone becomes a manager, we can add them to a calendar invite for manager training that takes place every quarter. We can add that manager to a Slack channel. We can enroll them into an LMS course onto Doshibi or Sana or whatever LMS you use. You can send them some new manager guidance. You can send them a poll a few weeks later asking about their experiences. And for all of these, you can click on them. They're presented out of the box, and you can further define it. So in this case, a person moves from 0 to 1 or more direct reports. I want to have a Slack message sent to that newly promoted manager. I want the message to come from me because I run L&D in the company to that newly promoted manager. And this is the message that I want to send, or I want to send a message to that person's manager. The great thing here is we can track actions taken. We can set reminders, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes everything a lot more manageable across the board. So that's kind of what workflow automations look like at scale. Now, what you can see here, it's a little bit, if you're running like, 50 processes within, or let's say even 10 processes within N8N or within Zapier, you probably run 50 workflows or more. It becomes very unmanageable very quickly. So what Pin helps you to do is kind of organize it, it simplifies everything, and it provides you with the overview across the board. The good thing about a system like Pin is it's, like Zapier can get pretty expensive, or N8N can get pretty expensive at scale. If you're running a lot of these automations, every workflow that you enable, you start paying for that. Pin kind of bundles all of that together, and it ends up probably cheaper than a Zapier over time. So that's why companies use a system like Pin. Cool. So in the dying minutes of this webinar, I know that we've gone through a lot. I wanted to share you some resources that you can leverage. So first of all, please connect with Stacy and I on LinkedIn. You got our LinkedIn URL profiles here. We post about this stuff all the time, and we have these little short videos or examples that we're showing on all of the workflows that you may consider on all of these different tools. Stacy recently vibe coded a manager coaching guides generator as well, where you can put in your competency framework and provide coaching advice to managers as their direct reports move from one level to another. Really interesting stuff. I vibe code 2 tools, an employee recognition tool that you can add to Slack called $, and a sentiment survey on Slack called Team Temperature. These are all free to use apps that we're producing in our Pin lab. So feel free to download those. Again, if you follow us online, you will get all of this stuff sent to you. But of course, we're going to be sending some information post this webinar as well. I know we're at time. Stacy, are there any dying questions that we need to definitely touch on before we end the webinar?
I think I answered all of the questions that I could. There were some that were pretty technical, and I did my best to answer those questions, even though I'm also on the learning journey. There was a question about Pin. When is the new Pin journey version going to be released in the activation site? So I think we have some Pin users on the call who are very excited to maximize their Pin usage.
Yeah, I think so we used to have a journey design tool that allowed you to kind of map out all your journey moments. This Pin, which includes the activation side, so all of the activation is now freely available. So you can activate all of those moments. So you can automate all of those moments right now. You can log in for free. I'll add a login to the post webinar notes as well. You can log in. You can actually enable one of these automations for free. So you can kind of connect it to your Bamboo HR instance and Slack and other tools that you have, Gmail, calendar, that type of stuff, and try it out. So I will send a link after this webinar with more information.
Awesome.
Great. I think I did it. I think I went through all of it within the time. I was sweating a little bit throughout to try to make sure that I get through all the information. I think the only area where I didn't provide all the information is probably the end-to-end journey. It was a little bit detailed. So what I'll do is I can share some more information offline to webinar participants. If you have any questions, though, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share more insights as well. Or if you have a specific question around, one of the tools that you're using or something you are thinking of building, but you don't know quite how to start or where to start, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to provide some tips. Thank you, everyone, for listening to me ramble on and try to navigate a live demo. It was great to kind of show all of this. Have a lovely day, and hope to see you all on LinkedIn. Thank you all.